Thank you, everybody. We're going to start this first meeting of the ABC Gaming Subcommittee. I'm Delegate Paul Krizek, your new chairman. And before we start, we're going to have a presentation from Travis Hill, the CEO of the Virginia ABC. But before we start, Travis, I just want to introduce everybody, let them introduce themselves. We have, and I want to especially thank former chair here, who's Delegate Knight, and Will Moorfield over here, Delegate Moorfield. I guess I'll just since we only have a few folks here anyway, I'll mention we've got Delegate Van Valkenburg and Delegate Hurst, Delegate Aird, and Chairman Luke Torian. He's always chairman because he's appropriations chair, so that's important. I learned that when I joined appropriations. Chairman Jones told me that. So anyway, that's important. So let's start without further ado. We're gonna, and I also I warned Travis that we would interrupt with questions. So feel free to put your light on and request to speak, and if that's okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, when I was chairman, and every time that Travis came to speak, he always bought all the members a bottle of 20-year-old Pappy Van Winkle. So I didn't know if you continue with that tradition or not.
Yeah, we've got some Mad Dog 2020 in the back.
That's right. Oh, no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here before this committee. A number of exciting things going on this year that will be here with you all through the duration to assist with. On this presentation, I've got a fair number of slides really to cover the waterfront of Virginia ABC, and then focus at the very end on the license reform effort that will come before you all in the form of legislation that's being carried by Delegates Knight and Bulova. Give you a little background. I was appointed COO of Virginia ABC in October of 2014, CEO January 2018, and really over that time have focused on the modernization of ABC. Modernization from the concept of investing in our infrastructure in a business that we own, we decided to own after the privatization failure in 2011, but also an approach to how we regulate and how we interact with licensees to make sure that we're accommodating where we can new business models and approaches to the changing social norms around alcohol, but then also making sure that we're maintaining the public safety mindset for which we were created. So really, we're trying to maintain a customer-driven organization that's working to fulfill the public trust going forward. So high level, Title 4.1 creates the Alcohol Beverage Authority. We were converted in 2018 to an authority, 5 part-time member board appointed by the governor. I'm also appointed by the governor. A former legislative attorney for this very committee is now the vice chair of Virginia ABC Authority. That is Maria Everett, and she is serving in the chair capacity until the governor appoints a new chair after the resignation of Jeff Painter. So I almost feel like we're playing unfairly because we have Maria on our side who can really walk us through the code so well and help train most of your attorneys here as well. So a great asset to us. As an authority, we are exempt from the Personnel and Procurement Acts as well as obtaining things from VITA. So if you were in that earlier presentation, those rules don't apply to us. We are actually a little bit different, but we are pragmatic in the sense that we continue to work with DGS on how we procure things. We do use EVA, and we also worked in very close partnership with them in the acquisition of the property and the building contractor for our new central office and warehouse facility. So as well as a retailer, we're also a regulator of the alcohol beverage industry, manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers. We'll get into that a little bit as well. So our powers are pretty extensive. We are the sole retailer of spirits in the Commonwealth. And under that, with our retail operations, we control where we locate our stores. We use demographics, traffic patterns, shopping systems, all those types of things to really determine where we locate our stores. We select our products, we determine the pricing of those products, and we determine how we promote products as well. And that can go from advertising, that I'll talk a little bit about, but it's also about how we limit products. Delegate Knight had an Everclear bill. It used to be illegal in Virginia. It legalized it, but we worked to make sure that we did not sell that close to college communities because we thought that would be an issue. So we do control how we sell things. One other thing, Delegate Hurst, your bill last year, moving the Commonwealth from from dry to wet, takes effect in July of 2020. So local referenda do still impact us. We can only go where they allow mixed beverages, but that will be much easier in July of 2020. 2020. And we have heard no one having a dry referendum coming into it. We actually had somebody want to do a preemptive referendum to go wet, and we told them just wait for it. So I think that was a good move. So we are viewed very much as a revenue-generating organization for the Commonwealth. We hit over $1 billion in revenue this past fiscal year, transferred $200 million in profits, and then about another $300 million in tax revenue. So we transferred about $500 million to the general fund. We're very proud of our underage sales compliance at 99%. We think that's a testament to the control state model. And we have over 1,000 full-time employees and 2,500 part-time employees, so a fairly large organization. This was kind of a fun picture that we came up with a $1 billion campaign, $1 billion announcement, really to help folks understand where this revenue goes. The lottery does such a good job talking about how they do things for education. We go to the general fund, so we just kind of pointed out how the general fund was used, but then also the breakdown of the various profits and taxes and how they go to the general fund. But with the revenue that we produce, you'd have to have $129 in additional taxes on households in order to make that up. So we think it's a win for the Commonwealth. This just shows the growth that we've got in our profits as well as in store numbers. Opening new stores continues to be a way to drive profits for the Commonwealth. And this is the history of our profit transfers over the last 7 years, totaling about $3 billion between profits and taxes collected. So in addition to being a retailer, we are a regulator. These are some of the excerpts from 4.1101. We're charged with regulating the possession, sale, transportation, distribution, and delivery of alcoholic beverages. I think it's interesting that last bullet, it talks about health, safety, and welfare, but then it also talks about convenience and prosperity. So it really is about maintaining public health, public safety, but it's also about being a convenient location and working with businesses so there are convenient locations out there, and also making sure we're generating revenue for the Commonwealth. So it's really kind of across the waterfront that we have, but we're looking at making sure that businesses have an even playing field when they are serving alcoholic beverages, and that we're keeping out any type of criminal element. Some of the very things that arose with Prohibition are still valid today. So you're going to hear a lot in this coming session around the alcohol industry, the three tiers. So those are your manufacturers, your wholesalers, your retailers. Manufacturers, the people who make it, beer, wine, spirits. But then you're going to see some other things, confectionery licenses, being able to add alcohol to confectionery things, kombucha. I just saw there was a recall, actually, I think it's in Australia, of kombucha that is fermenting in the bottle and the alcohol levels are going up. So there's some other things that people are manufacturing now. Wholesalers, those are the folks who deliver to the retailers from the manufacturers. They are an independent tier. We are that sole wholesaler for spirits. And then you've got wine and beer wholesalers for beer and wine. Then you've got retailers. And again, this is a tier that has a lot of different players in it now. You've got the traditional folks there, but then you also have the manufacturers engage in some retail activity on the brewery site or winery site or distillery site. But then you also have folks who are giving product away as part of another business model, kind of day spas, art instruction studios, those types of things. So there's some nuance to these areas now. So the typical legislative issues, you're going to see bills that may impact license types. Who needs a license? They want to do something. Do they need a license to do that or not? And then license requirements. What do they need to do to keep a license? Do they need to sell food? How much food do they need to sell? Do they have to be a certain size, engage in a certain business? Those types of things that come about. And then license privileges. What are you allowed to do with that? Do you just sell on-site? Do you sell on and off? Are you a manufacturer? What are those types of things? You're going to see bills in that venue. But then there's also license fees. And that's really about how do we make sure we properly regulate the industry by generating revenue to cover the personnel that we need to make sure that we're doing it in the proper way. On the state retail side, you're going to see legislation that may impact ABC retail practices. There is a bill dealing with advertising this year and whether or not ABC can advertise. There's things around delivery and being able to deliver distilled spirits. Last year we had Sunday hours and operating earlier on Sundays. And then who sells the spirits and who keeps the profits? We've worked with Virginia distillery stores last year to have that 20% commission legislation put in and continue to work with them on how we allocate money back to them through their operations. So just a couple key words, just have a little fun. The three-tier system, tied house, things of value, those are all items that matter a great deal when we're regulating this alcohol beverage industry. The Christmas tree, that's one thing we're trying to address a little bit with the license reform effort of maybe getting away from a Christmas tree approach or at least changing it a little bit going forward. So really the regulatory environment, I would say, is dynamic. We've just had an explosion of regulants in this area. You see the numbers there with the number of breweries, wineries, and distilleries that are opening. Many of these folks are new to the industry. They may not be familiar with the three tiers and just the high degree of regulation. And oftentimes our agents, who are led by Chief Kirby, who's here today, are having to explain to business operators, while it may be okay to pay for shelf space for potato chips, it's not okay to pay for shelf space for spirits or for beer or wine. And so really having those conversations to make sure people understand their limitations going forward. Part of the license reform effort does address trying to make sure we increase our personnel, because as these licensees have gone up over the years, our agent numbers have actually diminished. And so our agents, right now it's like 1 to 230 licensees. So it is a broad spectrum of licensees that they've got to cover any given time. So to talk about our Bureau, 110 employees, about 88 of those are sworn field agents. They are fully sworn law enforcement officers. We were reaccredited by VALEPSI, which is Virginia Law Enforcement Professionalism Standards Commission. We are one of 99 law enforcement organizations in Virginia to be accredited. That's something we're very proud of. It's something we did for the first time back in 2015. So you see there are 19,000 retail licensees. We also do 24,000 one-day banquet licensees. Those are all investigations. Those are all activities our agents engage in with the licensed community. Also, we have a hearings division. We hear our own cases. We adjudicate about 500 annually. We have our own hearing officers. As part of the authority, with the board not being full-time, we've tried to streamline our processes to make sure we resolve these cases effectively, and we've been successful in that and diminishing the days taken to resolution. Our board does sit as an appeal board. They do hear cases as administrative law judges on an appeal basis, so they will render those decisions. A couple of things that have kept us busy: direct shipping. This is where you've got either a retailer or a manufacturer who is shipping direct from their site to the end consumer. It is taken off with the internet and sales platforms. I dare to say some of you have probably ordered some wine online primarily. Maybe you're part of a wine club. The folks who are shipping in need to be licensed by Virginia, and it has been a task these last few years of us working with common carriers, FedEx and UPS, to make sure that these folks are licensed, one, so that we know who they are, but also so we make sure they're collecting the taxes they're supposed to be collecting on the products going forward. The other big effort in the last year to 18 months has been the license reform effort that I'll get into a little bit later, but that is what resulted in House Bill 390. So the profit forecast, we are projecting sales growth about 4.6% in FY 2020. This is outstripping the industry right now, and I would attribute that to continued new store growth, but also some of the things we're doing around promotion and advertising and consumer engagement. To the part of new stores, we've got about 386 stores right now. We've opened 10 in the current fiscal year, with 9 more on track to open. We also really relocate stores when we think that there's an opportunity there. We do post in our locations to make sure the community knows that we're coming. We take take comment from them to make sure that we are aware of any issues there may be going forward. Right on cue, Chairman Torian. Our profit requirement for Virginia ABC and the Appropriation Act is outlined before you. So we are forecasting increased revenue. You'll see FY 20 to 21, it's a smaller increase than in years past. That is because of the infrastructure investments we're making in IT systems, licensing systems, other things. We're going to depreciate some of those items. So this was something we forecast back in 2015, and so just to call that out going forward. Quick note on operating budget items. We're investing, again, cost of goods sold, that's to buy the liquor in order to sell the liquor. continue to invest in new store growth. That means hiring additional staff to run these stores. We are trying to convert more of our personnel from wage to full-time. The Affordable Care Act, when it came in and the state passed the 29-hour rule, that impacted our operations tremendously because we could no longer work a part-time person or a wage person 40 hours. It came down to 29, so we hired a lot more people. We think the better balance is to have more full-time because you're able to train those folks and give them a more predictable schedule. So we are trying to convert more folks into the full-time positions. We're also paying for some of the warehouse move going forward, the license reform, wait for it, and then also updates to our stores to just keep pace with retail trends. So I talked a little bit about modernization on the infrastructure side. This slide, it captures that when I came on board in 2014, we'd done a review of the various investments that were needed, primarily from an IT infrastructure standpoint for Virginia ABC. Legislation, funding was passed in 2015 to remediate some of our aging systems that were failing or out of support. Reporting out very quickly, the financial management system was delivered on time and on budget this past July. So that really creates a stable foundation for us to operate our businesses. We are transitioning out of Vita SESC by July of 2020. This is as a result of the authority. We can obtain IT services outside of Vita and are doing so where it is financially prudent to do that. Our licensing system, we're projecting coming online in July of 2020 to make it easier to do online transactions with licensees and also ease our agents' burden out in the field when working with licensees. Our new point-of-sale system, we're looking to roll out by mid-2020. This is going to enable us to do more retail programming, engaging with our customers, keeping track of what they want to purchase, and giving us opportunities around inventory management and those types of things. And then the central office and warehouse coming in the third quarter of 2021 out on Pole Green Road in Hanover County, which will give us greater capacity to ship spirits and continue to grow our stores. So those are the investments.
Travis,
there.
a
Yes,
quick
sir.
question. I'm excuse my ignorance, but what is point of sale?
That's a cash register. It's your monitor, your cash drawer, your PIN pad, and scanner. So that's the point of sale system. Ours, typically a typical point of sale system, I think lasts 5 to 7 years. I think we're in like year 15 of ours, and so it's just very limited. If you were to bring in our store employees, they'd probably tell you the number one thing they dislike is the point of sale system we have right now because it's not always dependable in that regard. So this is just a little bit more on the point-of-sale system. So we're going to be replacing over 1,000 registers going forward, and some of the modern retailing opportunities that I discussed earlier. The building and warehouse, again, resolving some of the capacity issues that we have. Had a little bit of a scare this afternoon. I was called by my chief of enforcement to say we had a fire at the warehouse. I thought this was going to be a really depressing presentation to you all, but it was fortunately just a motor in one of our dock doors that caught on fire, so everything's good there. But we are moving forward and, again, worked closely with DGS around project management of this facility. And it broke ground in January of this year and working towards completion. So one of the things we've done in recent years is around advertising. We think it's important to remain top of mind with our customers. While we are a monopoly on spirits, we're not a monopoly on gift giving. We're not a monopoly on beverage alcohol in general. And so we think it's important to make sure that consumers know we're out there, that there are opportunities to purchase from us. And what we're seeing in the various programs that we've put forward is people are extremely responsive to the campaigns that we're putting forward. This was some numbers from 2018. From which we built the 2019 promotional campaign. We partnered with Virginia Tourism on one campaign. We've partnered with the Virginia Spirits, Virginia Distillers Association as well to feature Virginia Spirits, but then also focusing on sales, featuring new products, as well as putting an emphasis on particular products at particular times of the year. We are focusing very much on making sure that our employees are educated on products and they can talk to folks about what they may want and be able to provide a resource to the customers when they're coming in. So this just covers some more of the 2019 advertising campaigns that we've done. We try to do so. We always have a responsibility message whenever we advertise, and it's very much around the ideas of kind of the gift giving or an opportunity to purchase a higher end item at a lower price, those types of things. So we have gone to radio, television, digital, social media, even in cinemas, and by and large have had a pretty positive reaction to the advertising that we've engaged in. And people we survey after the fact talk about making ABC more top of mind for them and also kind of improving our overall presence in the market as well. So people have seen that as a benefit. Some of the other things we've done around creating retail efficiencies is how we're operating our stores, being more efficient about the trucks and how we unload the trucks, how we continue to take inventory, creating a scheduling matrix so we're not overscheduling people where we have too many people and not enough work, or vice versa where we don't have enough people when things are most busy. SKU optimization. SKU is stock keeping unit. That is a product. And so what we're doing there is looking at our stores, the buying patterns, to make sure that the products we have on our shelves are the things that people are looking for. And that makes a world of difference in profitability for a store. So making sure that those things are done, because a store in Henrico or Montgomery County may be different than a store in Abingdon or Alexandria. And so you're going to have a different product mix throughout that. We also do monthly marketing programming to keep our stores fresh around what we're featuring, and then also trying to engage our customer to see what more they want to see from Virginia ABC. So one other thing before I go into the license reform, this is something we are tracking actively. It's the tariffs that are being imposed as a result of the World Trade Organization decision on the Airbus subsidies being paid over in Europe. There is currently a 25% tariff on certain spirits that are being imported. Right now, the reactions all over the board. Some suppliers want to pass it all on to the end consumer. Some suppliers are passing on a little bit, and other suppliers are just taking the hit and saying we're going to keep our prices the same. What we're watching is the fact that there's a 100% tariff proposal that the trade representative is taking comment on until January 13th. Obviously, if that goes into effect, pricing will again have some upward pressure on it. What we've done, we tend to change prices on a quarterly basis, so we have held the line right now with our suppliers saying we're not adjusting prices outside of that window, but pricing for April was due in January, and I would anticipate a number of suppliers have put in for a price increase because of the tariffs going forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Who's over here? Delegate Hurst, sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Travis. Does the consideration of tariffs going up to 100% include any additional kinds of spirits that are imported, blended whiskeys or anything like that, or is it still just single malt and then liqueurs and cordials?
As far as I know, it's still those three that they're looking at right now. We actually tried to pull up the USTR list and I don't know if you've ever read through that, but it's amazing the specificity that they get down into it. So we're frequently what we depend on is the supplier calling us saying, yeah, my product's in that list. We're going to see a hit, and this is what we want to do. But right now we have tried to just hold the line and not increase prices and see what goes forward from there.
Chairman Torian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have a number on that in dollars that it has cost us so far?
No, and I don't know how much. I don't know that it's cost us anything just yet because of the fact that we haven't moved on pricing. What's going to be interesting is any price increases that go in April. What does that mean to us? Is it going to be a reduction in consumption? I think there's probably going to be some shifting in products. Those folks that like single malts may discover bourbon. I don't know, but it's something that we're trying to keep track of because there is an elasticity here that we need to keep track of.
Mr. Chairman, so what I'm hearing you saying is that the product is subject to a cost increase?
Yes.
Okay.
And it won't be ABC increasing that price, but it could be our suppliers saying, this is how we can get it to this is the price for which we have to get it to your dock door. So the legislation that's going to be coming before you this year deals with license consolidation and fee restructuring. It's really an effort that started back in 2017 with reviewing our license fees and application fees as a result of some budget language that asked us to look into it. And it's really around what we're seeing is a growth in industry around existing licensees, but also the creation of new license types, as well as new entrants and business models that are trying to make way into the Commonwealth and sell alcohol. What I would say is back in 1934, we had 10 licenses. Currently, we have about 70 licenses that can be combined into 170 different types of licensed entities. So it has grown exponentially. What's interesting, though, is that on our books today, we have 10 licenses with 2 or fewer holders. We actually have 3 licenses that don't have anybody in the Commonwealth that hold them. So this is a situation that I think is ripe to clean up the code and also reform our regulations to make sure that things are more straightforward for the licensees and the regulated community to understand what's required. I'd also say that license numbers have continued to grow, but the revenue with license fees, the license fees haven't been adjusted, so we're not making the money that we need to make to adequately regulate this industry. And we've worked with industry on this, and they are supportive of trying to make sure that we've got the right resources. So going forward, the legislation that you all will consider this year came about from a letter from Senate Rehab and Social Services asking us to propose a consolidation of licenses, explore the creation of a marketplace license, look at fees, but also engage with relevant stakeholders going forward. So to try to encapsulate the current state, the red bars are different types of licenses. The gray bubbles are businesses, business models. And so what you see is, depending on what you want to do as a grocery store, you would get a restaurant license, a gourmet shop, or a grocery store license. But it's not always apparent going in which one you may need. You may be a traditional grocery store, but then you realize your competitor is now doing sampling, and you want to be able to do sampling. Well, you can't do that under a traditional grocery store model. You have to go get a gourmet shop license. And then you have places like Wegmans that are restaurants as well, and so they have a different model. And so what you had is this confusion around, or a bleeding into categories to necessarily understand what someone might want to do with their business. And we just think there's a better way to try to clarify this and reduce some license types going forward. So we created an internal study team to drive the study, conduct the research around our operations and the licenses that we have. We also engaged with external stakeholders, having a number of large meetings as well as individual meetings so that we could get their concerns, what they wanted to see to come out of this process in order to present something to the General Assembly that made the most sense and accomplished what we were seeking from the standpoint of greater simplicity, additional revenue, and support for licensees. So we had some guiding principles that are present in the legislation. No licensee loses privileges that are currently held. I think that's important. No one who currently holds an ABC license is going to be without an ABC license after this process goes forward. Our recommendations maintain the 3-tier model. That's something I covered with you all earlier. The manufacturer, wholesale, and retail tiers, it follows that model, so that is not put into question. We want to reduce complexity of the licensing structure. We want to set fee amounts by objective analysis of the workload that's created in issuing these licenses. A very important item for our stakeholders is fee revenue only used to support regulatory services. The stakeholder community feels that when they pay a license fee, it should go to enforcement. It should go to regulating the industry to make sure they have an even playing field, to make sure that they have the proper support and education that they need. And then we also have a concept on a regular cadence to examine fee amounts so that we don't get so far behind that we're having to come back into the General Assembly to ask for fee increases. So some of the high-level recommendations, we want to standardize certain privileges. So if you want to be able to do a tasting, you know what license you need, that it's not, I have to go over this license or a different type of license. Implement consistent qualification standards so it's clear that you don't have licenses that, well, one has to get $2,000 in food sales and the other has to get $1,000 in food sales, but their privileges are basically the same, really making it more straightforward for that. A very big concept that we have is the marketplace license that allows the complimentary service of beer or wine as a secondary gratuity. And this comes about with some of the things that, well, I'll get into the marketplace, but this is your day spas, your art instruction studios, those types of things, where they don't want to sell alcohol, but they would like to be able to provide it. So consolidation, we're going to reduce the number of licenses by more than 50% with this legislation. So it's going to be a considerable reduction in the types of licenses we have. We're saying that most mixed beverage licensees will now include wine and beer on and off. Previously, it was just on premise. Again, making it so that you obtain that license and then you kind of pick and choose what you want to do with the privileges allotted to you, as opposed to having to go back in and ask for another privilege from us. There's no longer just an on-premise beer license. It would include both wine and beer on-premise, creating consistent sample and tasting serving sizes, so you don't have this distinction between how much can be tasted or sampled between licensees, and then including things like keg delivery and tasting privileges for an off-premise licensee rather than them having to go out and get an additional permit or a separate license. We also restructured the seating capacity around mixed beverage licensees. This was done because you had large hotels that were paying the same fee amount as a very large conference center. It's a different burden on our enforcement personnel, and so we just think it makes sense to distinguish those two items. And then also, previous retail on-premise now includes on and off-premise. Doesn't mean you have to sell off, but you're able to do that should you wish to change your business model going forward. So to kind of show you where we're headed, under the old model, you'd have a retail licensee that would have to decide, wine off, beer and wine off, and then do they want to get a gourmet shop because they want to do tastings? Do they want a delivery permit because they want to deliver? Do they have to get a keg permit because they want to do a keg? No, all they have to do is get a beer and wine off, and they're done. So it's much less of a complicated process for them in that. The marketplace license, I think, is one that merits a fair amount of discussion. It is a new concept having to do with a business being able to provide complimentary drinks, provided they meet certain requirements set forth in terms of providing goods or services in a personalized experience, staffed with personnel who have expertise in that good or service, falling into a single category or classification, and they don't otherwise qualify for a different license type. And so right now, the businesses that would fall into this marketplace that are currently have a license would be day spas, art instruction studios, meal assembly kitchens, co-working establishments, bespoke clothier, just to kind of name a few. Each one of those are very business model specific drafted. And if you could be in that industry but have a little bit of a different business model, and you wouldn't qualify for the license. So our thought is to create something where they can come to ABC, satisfy some threshold issues, and that would enable us to issue the license rather than having to come to the General Assembly with a specific business model proposal that then has to be passed. I think it also helps because even some of the existing licenses can provide some challenges to us as ABC. In a day spa, you have to provide massage therapy. Well, how many days do you have to provide massage therapy? Is it can they just massage your scalp? Does it have to be full body? Is it Swedish? Is it deep tissue? I mean, what are you doing? Art instruction studio. We've fielded calls from people that have said, I teach knife skills. I teach culinary arts. I want to be able to serve alcohol. And it's like, so what is art? We had a very long debate about icing.
Mr. Chairman.
And fondant.
Mr. Chairman. We have a question. I think we need to know that we have a definition of art over here.
No, I just wanted to point out that he knows his massages.
Yeah. There's some other, I think that's a different committee that's going to be hearing.
It was, I've been married for 16 years, and it's a go-to Christmas present, let me tell you. I'm all flustered now. So the criteria also considered for approval: duration of time spent, at an establishment, hours of operation. Certainly don't want them operating late into the night. That's not their purpose, to be a nightclub or an establishment of that nature. Participate in approved training, making sure an ABC manager is on site, and that they are obtaining their alcohol through the wholesale tier, just as any other retailer would. Also, the license fee is $1,000 per year. That is a high license fee, but we think that given the uniqueness of this license and really wanting to make sure these businesses take seriously the service of alcohol, we thought that it was important to keep track of that and have a license fee.
Travis,
matched.
quick question. So
Yes, sir.
the proposal here is to put all these different small categories under this new marketplace. But correct me if I'm wrong, some of these smaller categories, like art instruction, for example, depending on how much alcohol is consumed in a year, correct me if I'm wrong, it was quite a low fee. So it's quite a jump from maybe a couple $100 to
I think it's like $100.
$100 to $1,000. So there's some smaller businesses that would really be severely impacted by that.
I think they could be, but I think it's also making sure they take into account the uniqueness of the business model and the giving of the alcohol. What we found, day spa, I think it's day spas are about 75% of these licenses. And when we started looking into it, we have found a fair number of violations there where they've got this ability to serve alcohol, but they may not really be taking it that seriously. They may not really be abiding by the rules that were set in the code. And so we think this is a way to make sure they're serious and they pay attention to what they're doing as part of this endeavor.
And so the amount of alcohol would also go up. I mean,
I think it's this is where we standardize it, and I'm going to throw a lifeline over to David May, the attorney, who has been instrumental in putting all this together, and he almost knows it by heart, I'm hoping. Sample size, it is not going up for day spas and those types of things. We're just leveling it.
I'm sorry, not the size, but the amount, the actual, the total gallons that you're allowed to give away or whatever over a period of time.
Well, the limitation is by consumer, so there's no cap on how much alcohol they could give away in a year.
Oh, okay.
It's more limited by the individual's only entitled to, I think it's 2 glasses of wine or 2 glasses of beer, basically, on a visit.
So if they have lots of customers, they can drink a lot of alcohol. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Interesting.
That's correct. Permits are also something that have been discussed in this study. We've got 17 different types of permits, but only 7 have a fee. What we found looking back into the code is a lot of these permits are issued and then we never hear back from the holder of that permit. There's no renewal structure in place, so we don't know if they continue to use that permit or not. And so what we've created is an application fee for the permit, as well as trying to set fees that reflect the level of involvement in our agents to issue the permit, because there's still an inspection going on, there's still a review of material, so we just need to make sure we capture that time and cost going forward. We're going to have it so that it's renewed annually. If it makes sense, there are some one-off licenses, the personal import license or the continuity of operations where you're selling a business with a license. Those are one-off things. You don't have a renewal aspect to that, but you will with the others. On the personal import, we do have a waiver for active duty military, because quite frequently those are the folks who are using it. They're coming back from an overseas deployment from Italy, Germany, France, typically one of those. They bought some wine. They want to bring it back. We issue a permit on that. We wouldn't charge them. And then also distinguishing between permits for an inactive still versus an active still, just to make that clear. So on the fee reform, we did review those in a comprehensive manner. The proposed fee increases are about $2.5 million. It is included in the governor's budget, so that is covered. The new positions being created are primarily non-sworn positions, so these are investigative analysts, forensic analysts. What we're finding is we need to spend more time looking at the documents that are being created by our licensees, making sure that they're following the proper rules, that they are serving enough food, that they are purchasing in the means and fashion that they need to purchase and following those laws. So we're able to do that with non-sworn. We also have 8 additional sworn positions. Those would go in kind of the higher density locations. Our Northern Virginia agents are certainly very taxed and with the number of licenses up there. So focusing in the more urban jurisdictions to handle those licenses and try to get that number down. But also there's opportunities, I think, in Southwest, because while there isn't as dense a licensed population, there's further distance to travel, and you just can't do as much in any given day. So really trying to create greater flexibility for enforcement officers to focus on law enforcement while our licensed technicians and otherwise are able to do the analyst and research needed going forward. And with that, that is the extent of license reform. I'm happy to take any questions on that or ABC operations in general, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Travis. Delegate Hurst has a question.
Two questions, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Travis, so the direct shipping issue with unlicensed shippers, you talked about working with common carriers to stop the practice so that we don't see this loss of revenue. Can you expand a little bit more on what we're actually doing to try and combat this issue, and is there any way the subcommittee and the General Assembly can be helpful in that effort?
Sure. I think what we've done is the common carriers submit to us on a monthly basis reports on who ships wine and beer into the Commonwealth. We review those lists. It is an extremely manual process, but we will review those lists and identify shippers who do not have a license. And we will share that back to the common carrier. And depending on if you're FedEx or UPS, they have different methods, but they'll send a cease and desist letter to that person, and then UPS will even cut them off. So because they are violating the terms of the common carrier's contract by shipping alcohol in a state they're not licensed. So that's how we've been able to do it. And we've gotten a pretty good response rate from that. I would say we've seen a reduction in the last year, about 60% in unlicensed shipments. So common carriers have been helpful to us in that. We're also going to have to focus on the amounts shipped in, because there is a limitation there in the code on how much you can ship into the state over a period of time. So that's probably going to be the next step once we feel like we've got that under control. But we really have gotten some of the big shippers into compliance or stop shipping into the Commonwealth. So I don't foresee anything on the immediate horizon, but I know there are stakeholder groups extremely interested in this issue, and you will hear from them and us if we think something more needs to be done.
Do we have any further questions? Travis? Yes.
Different question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Travis, I've worked with Delegates Knight and Moorfield on this Christmas tree legislation you alluded to earlier, and was thankful that we were able to take some real reform in that effort last year. Part of my interest in that was to help make it easier for retail operations to be able to get licenses in areas that are currently dry. But you had indicated when we talked last year about it that it would also maybe lead to an increase of ABC stores in those affected communities and be a revenue generator for the Commonwealth. Is that still the case, and do you have any update as we go into July 1st of this year where those stores may be and what we can anticipate? We are interested in locating more stores in the primary Southwest area where it's going to go wet. We've sent our retail representatives down there to talk to different landlords and others. I think we're looking at Independence as a possible location. I know Food City, which is one of the major regional grocers down there, has an expansion plan. I'm trying to remember what other towns they're looking at locating in, but I would anticipate we've looked at 2 or 3 opportunities. Pennington Gap, I think, is another one that's down there. I keep looking at you, Delegate Moorfield, but but I would anticipate the opportunity for 2 or 3 stores in that area. And they're not going to be Hilltop and Virginia Beach by any means, but we do think there's interest, and we think we can actually pull some customers from North Carolina and Tennessee and Kentucky as well. Yeah.
Delegate Knight.
Travis, I got one question. I think I remember from the past, of course, you referenced Hilltop, which is in Virginia Beach, and that's the highest grossing store that you have down there. So, but you don't want to cannibalize other areas. So when you go to Southwest out there, there won't be any cannibalization because there wasn't anything there. But I heard you say, I believe, that as a business model, any businessman will find this tremendous, that these stores are actually turning a net positive in a year to a year and a half, which is one heck of a business model. And as you are adding stores, you're outstripping inflation every year on your growth. So it's one heck of a business model they've got. Of course, it's called a monopoly also, but that's okay.
Well, but I tell our folks, while we're a monopoly, we don't have to act like one. And so I think that's where we try to be very customer-driven in what we do and make sure that the customers are getting what they need at any time.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Travis,
Yes,
for
sir.
a very comprehensive briefing. And I think we've all learned a lot. And if there's no further business, I move that, or I guess I just adjourn the meeting. We're finished. We'll see you next week after general laws.
Thanks, sir.